Namaste and good afternoon. Welcome to a very special session from Apollo Hospitals today on the occasion of World Stroke Day. This is Dr. Srinidhi Chidambaram, and today we are discussing the latest advancements in stroke care. And for this, we have a distinguished panel of some of our most renowned neurologists and neurosurgeons to give you a complete in-depth overview of stroke and the latest in stroke management. Stroke is a perfect example of a disease that you need to be fully aware of. Why? Because firstly, it is a serious and even fatal disease that may begin with the mildest signs, which you may miss if you are unaware of what to look out for. Secondly, this is one condition where immediate treatment can lead to great outcomes and recovery, and the longer you delay, the worse the consequences. In fact, this year's World Stroke Day campaign focuses on saving precious time, referring to the need to act fast in the aftermath of a stroke. And thirdly, there are risk factors that you must know all about so that they can be controlled by lifestyle modification, and thus stroke can be prevented. And finally, treatments for stroke have advanced so much today in leaps and bounds that it is worth knowing what they are. So let's begin, and I am really honored and glad to welcome our eminent panelists for today. We have Dr. P. Satish Chandra, very senior eminent neurologist, Apollo Hospitals, Bangalore. We have Dr. Alok Ranjan, Director and Senior Neurosurgeon, Apollo Hospitals, Hyderabad, and Dr. Arul Selvan, Senior Consultant Neurologist, Apollo Hospitals, Chennai. Dr. Satish Chandra is Advisor and Senior Consultant in Neurology at Apollo Hospitals, Bangalore. Since 2017, he's an acclaimed neurophysician, was faculty in the Department of Neurology at NIMHANS, Bangalore for more than 35 years, and then was also Director and Vice Chancellor of the same institute from 2010 to 2016. He has trained more than 200 neurologists of this country and has to his credit over 300 research publications and 51 book chapters, and has also started the comprehensive epilepsy program and stroke rehab program at Apollo Hospitals, Jayanagar, Bangalore. Welcome, Dr. Satish Chandra. Dr. Alok Ranjan is a very eminent and senior neurosurgeon, senior consultant and coordinator, Department of Neurosurgery at Apollo Hospitals, Jubilee Hills, Hyderabad since 1999 with an experience of over 30 years. He is one of the earliest practitioners of minimally invasive spine surgery in the whole country. He established the Department of Minimally Invasive, Image-Guided and Robotic-Assisted Spinal Surgery at Apollo, Hyderabad, performed more than 9,000 major neurological operations at Apollo Hospitals, Hyderabad, and regularly conducts instructional courses in minimally invasive disc surgery and and also conducts several nationally well-known workshops. Welcome, Dr. Alok Ranjan. We also welcome Dr. V.L. Arul Selvan, Consultant Neurologist, Apollo Hospitals, Chennai. Dr. Arul Selvan is a very well-known neurologist in Chennai, completed his MD in General Medicine at the Madras Medical College, DIPN-B in Internal Medicine, and then his DM in Neurology at the Sri Ramachandra Medical College and Research Institute, Chennai. With an experience of over 21 years, received awards such as the Hyundai Endowment Award for Proficiency in Anatomy in College, presented several research papers in acclaimed national and international journals, member of the American Academy of Neurology. Doctors, it is a privilege to have you all here today, and we all look forward to this wonderful discussion on stroke. So we will begin by asking Dr. Satish Chandra, what is a stroke? So for our viewers to understand what exactly goes wrong in a stroke.
Yeah. A stroke is a common emergency, one of the immediate neurological emergencies which we see in every day. This is like heart attack. Everybody knows about heart attack. This is called brain attack, where there is blood supply which is reduced to the brain, and that produces an attack. And that attack is like brain attack or stroke. And the strokes are of different types, which we can discuss it later. But the stroke is known as acute emergency affecting the brain due to the reduced blood supply to the brain. Thank you.
Dr. Alok Ranjan, what causes a stroke? And would you like to tell us, what are the risk factors and what people must be aware of so that they can prevent it?
So there are, broadly speaking, two types of a stroke. In one, the lack of blood supply in the brain, which is called ischemic stroke. Depending on which part of the brain has got a lack of supply, you get symptoms pertaining to that. And the second type of stroke is when there is a sudden bleeding within the brain. That is called hemorrhagic stroke, in which there are several categories. So based on what we find, we have a management for that. The main risk factor for these things, if we rule out some pre-existing disease, is mainly lifestyle diseases. Most of these patients have diabetes, hypertension, poor lifestyle. The same risk factor which causes heart attack is the same risk factor which causes brain attack. Additionally, there are conditions such as blood vessel abnormalities like aneurysm or pre-existing AV malformation or some blood vessel disease itself, which can lead to either lack of supply or a rupture of the blood vessels, both of which present as a stroke.
So the modifiable risk factors which the public needs to be really aware of are things like hypertension, diabetes.
These are the controllable factors, and a good lifestyle, because not only they produce a stroke, smoking excessive causes. So these are the things which will reduce the chance of a stroke. Even once you get a stroke, things like obesity, things like bad lung disease, they will prevent you from recovering fast. So there are risk factors to prevent it, and there are factors which will prevent your early recovery. Both are to be included in that.
So really, these lifestyle factors play a role in many non-communicable diseases, isn't it? It's not just the stroke, but even heart disease or diabetes. So it really boils down to maintaining your weight, doing your exercise, not smoking, sleeping well, and reducing stress.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Arulselvam, I just wanted to ask you, as Dr. Alok Ranjan said, there are different types of stroke, and we spoke about the ischemic and the hemorrhagic types. Would you like to go into a little more detail about what exactly happens in each one of these types, and what is more dangerous, and also about the transient ischemic attacks as well, which people must be aware of?
So when it comes to stroke, we broadly classify it into ischemic strokes and hemorrhagic stroke. So ischemic stroke is one where one of the blood vessels supplying the brain is blocked. So whatever area of the brain supplied by the blood vessel does not get the blood supply. So that part of the brain gets damaged, and that produces a stroke. And the second one is the hemorrhagic stroke, where one of the blood vessels bursts inside the brain, leading to bleeding inside the brain. So roughly we can say that around 80 to 85% of strokes are ischemic strokes, around 15% are hemorrhagic strokes. So the risk factors for hemorrhagic strokes mainly is hypertension and some vascular malformations. Whereas for ischemic stroke, all the other risk factors hold true. So the main difference between these two strokes are that in terms of symptoms, both produce similar symptoms, but since hemorrhage happens into the brain, bleeding into the brain increases the pressure within the brain. So in addition to the routine symptoms, they also have headache, vomiting, and drowsiness as part of the stroke symptoms. So now coming to the ischemic stroke, again, the ischemic stroke, as I said, it is due to a block in the blood supply to a particular blood vessel. So this could be either due to a thrombus formation in that particular vessel, what is called as a thrombotic stroke, where some changes happen in the blood vessel, some tearing of the blood vessel wall, and then there is some clotting happens locally and the vessel gets blocked. The second one is there is a clot which is formed somewhere else, but it travels through the circulation and goes and blocks the vessel. So typically this is called an embolic stroke. So the ischemic stroke, we divided into thrombotic and embolic. Typically, this embolic stroke happens in patients with severe heart-related diseases. Either they have arrhythmias of the heart, like fibrillation of the heart, or it may be due to a severe problem in the contraction of the heart. So the heart doesn't contract properly. Blood stays in the heart and produces some clot inside the heart, which breaks up and then goes into the circulation and blocks one of the vessels in the brain. So that is embolic stroke.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Satish Chandra, I just wanted to next talk about this whole aspect of acting quickly, because we have all heard enough of this fast and, things that, people must act quickly to get the best outcomes. So what should they do? Like, what should they look out for? And what do you mean by acting quickly? Because people are often confused as to where they must go for treatment, what kind of first aid to give. So I would like you to explain a bit in detail, because I think this is a very important aspect of stroke awareness.
Thank you very much for this question. It is a very important aspect what you have raised. The time is brain. That means we need to honor the time here. The moment the patient has a stroke, the family members gets into the picture there. They have to identify whether it is a stroke. How do I identify the stroke? The first question comes in. So that can be taken as a mnemonic, BEFAST, B-E-F-A-S-T. It is the mnemonic which is used. What does it mean? B means balancing, E means eye, F means face, A means arm, S means speech, and T means time. That means that time is the most important aspect. So please identify whether it is a stroke. The stroke can manifest in a different way. They may have weakness in the limb of one side, or they may have a deviation of the face to one side, or they may have a difficulty in speaking, understanding, or expressing, or they may have balancing problem, or they may, eye also can go to one side, or they may not see properly all of a sudden. What is most important here is this occurs acutely. That means all of a sudden, bolt from the blue, the patient gets these symptoms. When the symptoms appear like this, we must recognize that this could be possibly a stroke. And once we suspect that it is like a stroke, the major problem starts then. The family member or the relative or any friend who knows the patient immediately has to take to a hospital. Which hospital is the major concern? We must be very sure where we are taking the patient, because as I said, time is brain and we have to save the nerve cells. The minutes saves the life. This is what is the message of this year, World Stroke Day. That means every minute we save, we are saving the nerve cells in the brain. So how do I act then? Immediately, the patient should be shifted to nearest hospital where all facilities are available. That is very, very important. These are called stroke-ready hospitals. Stroke-ready hospitals are very, very important, because otherwise, if I take the patient to one hospital which is next door to my house, then facilities may not be there at all. So they may have to send to another place to get a CT scan, or another place to get an MRI scan, or a doctor may not be available who is skilled enough to do the intervention. So what is important is you must take to a nearest stroke-ready hospital, which are usually the bigger hospitals where the facilities for imaging like CT scan, MRI, neurologists, neurosurgeons, and intervention neurologists, they are the radiologists who are available there. If you take the patient there, the time is very, very important. You must reach the hospital within 3 hours from your house. That is called door to needle. We always talk about door to needle. That means from your door to the needle. By the time the doctor puts a needle in your IV line, the time is very, very important. Please reach the hospital as early as possible. The next important thing which we need to look at is the patient has to be investigated as early as possible in the hospital. And that is another important setup. So in a center like ours, which is Apollo Comprehensive Stroke Care, which is available in most of the cities, what we are doing is we have a stroke team. And the stroke team consists of neurologists, neurosurgeons, as well as interventional neuroradiologists, and of course the lab, everybody is connected. So what happens is immediately a stroke arrives in the emergency room, the message is sent immediately to all the team members. That is the stroke team member. And once the stroke team member gets it, that means the drill starts from there. The drill has to start there. That means immediately the action should start without wasting time. Within next half an hour, we have to do whatever the things required, maybe like estimating the blood pressure, blood sugar, clinical examination, then a CT scan to look for what type of bleeding, or is it a hemorrhagic stroke or an ischemic stroke. Like that, the drill starts immediately. That is the reason we say that the stroke is very time-conscious disease which needs to be acted immediately and save the time. The time is brain, and this 3 hours is called golden hour. This golden hour is extremely important, and this is possible only with the stroke-ready hospital, not every hospital. So please don't waste the time. As soon as you recognize that this patient may have possibly a stroke, please get them through an ambulance, specially directed towards the stroke-ready hospital, so that the drill starts from there and immediate actions will be done, so that the time will be reduced, so that the next immediate drug which needs to be administered, which we'll talk about during the management issue, can be taken up. That is why time is brain. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Alok Ranjan, I just wanted to ask you, in your immense experience as the coordinator of one of the biggest departments of neurology and neurosurgery at Apollo Hospitals, Hyderabad, I just wanted to also ask you, what are the gold standards that we are following in our stroke care, in the emergency stroke care that we provide, that makes it so important, especially in a disease like stroke?
So our process of stroke care started more than 10 years ago, when Apollo Hyderabad was probably the first hospital in the whole world to have a disease-specific JCI accreditation. And it was done for stroke. Not that there are no doctors in other hospitals, but the JCI made us follow a process. And that process was running in seconds, not even in minutes. So the way patient reaches the hospital, and the plan is already decided when the patient is in an ambulance. We don't wait for the patient for a needle. The plan is decided because the time is essence, as Dr. Satish Chandra said. In ambulance itself, we know that the patient with this problem is coming. The MRI is ready. The blood reports are ready. CT scanner is ready. The second thing what we changed, that we stopped relying on intervention radiologist. Apollo Hyderabad created its own neurosurgeon trained in neuroradiology. So the work of neurointervention is being done by a neurosurgeon in our hospital. And how it has changed our life, that we, using a person who is clinically able to assess the patient, not only that, he's the same person who also does the surgery if the surgery is indicated. So there's no bias in the system. There's no time lag in the system. And by nature, you know, neurosurgeons are used to trauma, and trauma is again time. So the whole system is very geared for very, very fast action. It really is in minutes that the patient is assessed. In minutes, the patient is investigated. And most of the time, within 30 minutes, the reports are ready. And whatever procedure, whatever intervention is to be started, is started. And that has changed our whole stroke management. A teamwork and the essence of, you know, involving all the way from ambulance till the hospital. And the next golden step happened. People forget that after stroke, you have a deficit. So we established one of the best centers for neurorehabilitation. So there's actually from the time of ambulance to the time of discharge, you are taken care at every stage. so that you can have the more fruitful recovery.
Dr. Arul Selvam, now let us go on to the treatment part of stroke. So could you tell us what are the immediate therapeutic options for stroke, and what is first done when the patient arrives at the hospital? What kind of medication is given to the patient? And does it vary according to the type of stroke?
So as already been discussed, time is brain. That's what is said. So why is it so? Why is time brain? It is because the brain cells are very, very finicky cells, in the sense, if they don't have blood supply for a few minutes, the cells may die. So normally what happens when there is a block in one of the blood vessels, so it supplies a particular area. For example, say it supplies about 8 centimeters, cubic centimeters. So in that, the core of the area, maybe less than 1 cubic centimeter, may be actually irreversibly damaged. But the surrounding 7 cubic millimeter, if it's a minor stroke, or maybe 70 cubic millimeter, if it's a major stroke, maybe not functioning, but still it is salvageable. In the sense, it is injured, but it is not irreversibly damaged. So if we can restore the blood supply to this part of the brain, so that part will recover fully. So there is a chance that this partially injured nerve cells, which over time are going to get irreversibly damaged, we can stop it at some point, so that we can minimize the amount of damage produced by the vessel block. So this can be made possible only by opening up the vessel which has got blocked. For example, there is a thrombus which is blocking a particular blood vessel. We have to lyse that thrombus. We have to open up that vessel. But if you do the same thing, say after 24 hours of the stroke, already the entire area is damaged. So if you open up the vessel at that point, it is not going to help, because even if blood flows into the damaged area, it's not going to recover. So the maximum chance of recovery is in the first few hours. We say 3 hours, 4.5 hours, 6 hours, even within this. If you can do it within the first 1 hour, the results are really dramatic. If we do it at the end of 3 hours, some patients might have already developed irreversible damage. So the earlier we start the treatment, even within this 3 or 4.5 hours, it is better. So we have 2 forms of treatment. One is giving a clot busting drug. Either we give a drug like alteplase, tenecteplase. Basically, these are thrombolytic agents, though they lyse the clots. So if we see the patient very early, we do a scan, CT scan first, and we find that there is no bleeding into the brain, we give this clot busting drug. In many patients, it works, especially if the blood vessel which is blocked is a small blood vessel. The thrombus is a small thrombus. It may help to open up the vessel. But sometimes patients have a large blood vessel which is blocked, like the blood vessel in the neck itself gets blocked, or one of the major branches in the brain gets blocked. The thrombus is quite big, and this lysing agent will not be able to open up the blood vessel. So in that sort of patients, what we do is after the CT, we do an angiogram of the brain. If the angiogram is showing a large vessel occlusion, and if the patient, we find that there is a lot of area of the brain which is still viable, which can be saved, then we go for a mechanical thrombectomy. So for this mechanical thrombectomy, we need a dedicated space. We need a cath lab where we can do this angiogram. We need a 24-hour coverage of neurointensivist, neurointerventional people, either neurosurgeon or radiology, somebody who can do this clot extraction. So everybody can't do that. So you need a trained person to do that. So what they do is they go inside, put a wire through the leg, through the groin, go up to the place where there is a block. Either they give a small amount of some drug to lyse it, and then they use a particular stent and retrieval system to remove this clot. Either they suck it or sort of aspirate it, or they mechanically they remove it. And once this clot is removed and blood flow is restored, so many of these patients, we find that there is a dramatic response. For example, I can tell some patients who have got a brainstem stroke. There is a stroke involving the back of the brain. So those patients come in a completely comatose stage. So they are comatose and they are completely paralyzed. Within 3-4 hours, sometimes even at the end of 12 hours, if you are going to go inside and remove the clot, within a couple of days, they are fully conscious, they are moving all the 4 limbs. So the results of this type of mechanical thrombectomy is very, very rewarding, very good. Only thing is the patients have to come at the right time so that we don't lose this window of opportunity.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Alok Ranjan, would you like to give us a little more elaboration on these surgical options for stroke management?
So in ischemic stroke, where there's a lack of blood supply, depending on how big is the lack of blood supply for what area of brain, let us say 30 to 40% of the brain, then over time, there will be a swelling of the brain. And if there is a swelling of the brain is going to shift in the closed compartment and going to compromise the rest of the normal brain. In those cases, we monitor the patient both radiologically and mainly clinically. And if we see that the patient is deteriorating, there's a lot of mass effect in CT scan, then we go for what is called decompressive craniectomy. In that, we remove a large piece of bone corresponding to the area of brain damage. And we in actually Hyderabad, we have a bone bank. So we keep that patient's bone in the bone bank. And within up to 3 months, we can put the bone back on the patient. So we don't put any artificial thing. If it is a hemorrhagic stroke, then depending on the size of the blood clot, depending on the patient's neurological status and the brain pressure, we decide to operate. But there are 2 types of hemorrhagic stroke. One, which has happened and the blood vessels are otherwise all right. And one in which there's an underlying blood vessel disease, such as aneurysm or AV malformation. So we need to actually differentiate. Sometimes we suspect it based on the CT scan and MRI scan. And if movement we suspect, we either do a CT angiogram, MR angiogram, or even conventional angiogram. If there's no underlying defect, then we obviously go for decompression, remove the blood clot, and depending on the patient's condition, put the bone or not put the bone. But if there's an underlying condition, let us say aneurysm, which is a very totally manageable disease, but also one of the most destructive disease for the person, and happens on 3rd decade, 4th decade, and 5th decade. If we find, we decide where the aneurysm is, and depending on the anatomy of the aneurysm, patient's condition, we have either surgical choices to go and clip that blood vessel abnormality, or nowadays the endovascular techniques have become very advanced and various kind of coiling and stenting and flow diverter stents have come, and we do that. Sometimes they even require some additional procedure like bypass of the brain water which gets collected. Suppose there's an underlying disease like AV malformation, then depending on a case-to-case basis, the treatment may be delayed, blood clot may be removed, sometimes AVM is removed, sometimes AVM is left there. Once the patient recovers, then we decide about planned surgery or radiosurgery. So there are a whole lot of things. But now even for a condition which we saw very often in COVID disease, where we earlier used to see this disease in the pregnant ladies, cortical venous sinus thrombosis, started seeing more and more in these conditions. And there also, there's a role for decompression. We are even 1 or 2 cases, we have gone and tried to remove the thrombus from the vein itself. So as the type of catheters and the advancement has taken place, more and more minimally invasive techniques are being used, but they all depend on time. The more you delay, the more established brain damage you have, the less the chance of success.
Dr. Satish Chandra, could we now discuss a little more about what happens after the acute stage? So there is this whole element of the stroke rehabilitation, and we have programs. So could you just give us a gist of what happens and how does a person gain and overcome that neurological deficit after the stroke?
As we know that there is a stroke pathway, we use the word acute stroke pathway, and we follow the principle as like an SOP. From the emergency onward, these patients are going through the step-by-step approach. And when the step-by-step approach is done, we know that these are the patients who can be benefited by the clot buster, which Dr. Rahul Sullivan has talked about, or these are the patients where the intervention has to be done, which has also been talked about as a thrombectomy. Once that is done, the patients are always kept in an ICU for at least the next 48 hours. And if those patients who have undergone a clot buster treatment has to undergo and another CT scan on the next day to look for whether there is any hemorrhage or not. Sometimes there could be hemorrhage because of the drug which we have given. So to make sure that there is no hemorrhage on that patient, then the treatment starts. What is the treatment? There are treatments which are blood thinners, which could be in the form of an antiplatelet drug, which has to be given. Normally for an ischemic stroke, we always start on 1 or 2 dual antiplatelet drugs. These are commonly known as aspirin, which everybody knows. These are ecosporin or aspirin, which is a very good antiplatelet drug that prevents the aggregation or joining together of the platelets, forming a thrombus. And that is why these are known as blood thinners, which makes the blood to flow. The idea would be when the blood is not flowing because of the blood vessels are diseased here in the age of the patient, when the blood can be made to flow easily by giving these antiplatelet drugs. And these antiplatelet drugs are a number of types, and we usually give 1 or 2 antiplatelet drugs. At the same time, we need to look at all the risk factors the patient has, which we talked about it, the diabetes, the hypertension, the ischemic heart disease, or the patient has dyslipidemia or the bad cholesterol. These are the things which we need to look at. If any of these risk factors are there for the patient, maybe, for example, hypertension, we need to control that hypertension with a good effective drug and manage the blood pressure throughout in an ICU. Similarly, diabetes has to be managed. The fluid intake and fluid output is also to be managed, and the patient requires to be looked after carefully. The moment these are stabilized, the next phase of action starts from the rehabilitation or the physiotherapy. And the physiotherapy starts even in an ICU. The physiotherapy is both for the chest physiotherapy as well as for the limb physiotherapy. So we need to do various types of physiotherapy. To start with, it may be a passive physiotherapy, and then we go on to active physiotherapy. The moment the patient is stable from all his vital parameters, these are the patients to be subjected to for early mobilization. We always insist on the patient to be mobilized very early from the bed to the chair, and from the chair to make him stand, him or her to stand. Earlier you make the patient to stand and walk, it is better. So following, for example, what Dr. Arul Selvan has mentioned about mechanical thrombectomy or the clot buster, we have to take the next step. And the next step in this stage would be to management of the risk factors, and secondly followed by avoidance of any infections if are there. The chest infections are very common. So infections have to be taken care of, and then followed by fluid and hydration part of it. And the last is the rehabilitation. And ideally, if you have a stroke care unit, it would be ideal. If the stroke care unit is not there, the patients are managed at least in the first 48 hours in an ICU setup. And after that, the patients are gradually mobilized and shifted to the ward. And once the patient is shifted to the ward, we always do active physiotherapy. And active physiotherapy should be started at the earliest as soon as all the acute phases are over and acute pathway is looked after. That is why the acute pathway consists of 3 steps: identification, then the treatment, and then followed by rehabilitation. And this is a step-by-step approach. One needs to take it up, and then that will holistically, when it is done by the team of experts, which also includes critical care nurses as well as the physiotherapists. So the team works together with the doctors, which could be neurologists, the neurosurgeons, as Dr. Alok Ranjan has mentioned, or Arul Selvan has mentioned about the interventionist of the neurosurgeons, all joined together, work for the welfare of the patient. And this teamwork will always give good results so that the patient, the earliest, can be mobilized and even go home. So what we are talking about in principle in the stroke management is to save the brain from the damage of the blood flow reduction or the hemorrhage. And as soon as that is saved, the next question is how much we can rehabilitate the patient and make the patient to recover faster than necessary. And this is what exactly has to be done. Recently, I had a patient. The patient was 55-year-old who came to us with an altered sensorium and a balancing problem preceding that. So we suspected that this patient had a posterior circulation stroke or the stroke which has affected the back of the brain there. So that was the reason the first thing we did the MRI and MRA showed that there is a problem in the major artery. And immediately our interventionist went into the action. And then immediately this mechanical thrombectomy was required and the thrombus was removed. And this has happened, I can tell you, the patient came here at 8:30 in the evening and went on till about 10:30 in the night. And the next day, the patient, when we came and asked the patient, he was talking and he was able to move his legs and all the four limbs, and balance was very good. So we started mobilizing this patient. After 48 hours, we shifted the patient to the ward, and from the ward, he recovered very fast and went away. I can remember from my own story, my own experience, about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we didn't have these technology. So that time, we had the problem to look after these patients. We were ending up mainly in physiotherapy and rehabilitation only. Nothing actively was done. Now, with all these technological advances, the use of these drugs and mechanical thrombectomy and intervention, the patient's recovery is so good that this patient came back to me for follow-up after 48 hours. It is very difficult to even say whether it is the same patient whom I saw in the emergency. The recovery was so good. And that is what is expected out of an acute care stroke management followed by rehabilitation. The patient will have a useful life in the years to come.
Thank you. I have one more question for Dr. Arul Selvam, and after that we have some questions from our viewers. So I'm going to be reading them out to all of you. But before that, I would want to also ask about, one hears about deep brain stimulation and other types of external stimulation that is also done to enhance recovery from neurological conditions. So are they applicable to stroke and do they work?
Actually, in the phase of acute stroke or the immediate post-stroke care, so there is no role for deep brain stimulation. Earlier, people were using transcranial Doppler, which may help in the clot lysing. But nowadays, with the availability of intervention in the form of mechanical thrombectomy, so we don't go for those type of treatment. So there is no role for this deep brain stimulation, the acute or the post-acute phase. But some patients following stroke who have got very severe tremors, especially severe thalamic tremors, and sometimes some severe pain syndromes. So they may be candidates for a minority of patients for deep brain stimulation.
So we have these questions. So I'll first direct to Dr. Alok Ranjan. How will having a stroke change what I can and can't do?
It can make you totally normal if you are in the right place at the right time with the right expert. It can totally devastate you if any of these factors go wrong. So depending on what functions are gone, you may be just not useful to yourself or to the society. But if everything aligns, all the stars are aligned correctly, as I say, and you go to the right place, to the right person at the right time, there's a more than 50% chance you will do exactly what you were doing before.
Dr. Satish Chandra, this is directed towards you. Should I be taking aspirin or a prescription medication to help prevent a stroke, prevent another stroke?
Yeah. The antiplatelet drugs, which includes aspirin, is a drug which we give for a longer period of time or lifelong even to prevent the recurrence of the stroke. So for the long-term management of the stroke involves two steps. The first step is to handle the risk factors. Whatever the risk factor the patient has, that need to be tackled, whether it is a hypertension or whether it is a diabetes or whether it is an ischemic heart disease with irregular heart, or whether it is due to bad cholesterol or obesity or something like smoking and alcohol. All these factors are known as the risk factors. So to handle the risk factors, these risk factors have to be tackled for life. That means following the stroke, we should attach very much importance to these risk factors and handle these risk factors so that they will not get the stroke again. Second one is, since we know that these are patients who are more prone for stroke, to prevent that, the blood thinners or the antiplatelet drugs are used. And aspirin is one of the antiplatelet drugs. There are a number of other antiplatelet drugs. Those patients who cannot tolerate aspirin, we can give other drugs. And sometimes if they have ischemic heart disease or the heart problem, along with that a secondary stroke, we may have to use sometimes anticoagulation. That is a different class of drug. So these drugs are used for the patient depending upon their need, and most of these drugs have to be continued for a long time so that it can prevent the recurrence of these strokes.
Dr. Arul Selvan, this question is for you. My aunt recently survived a stroke. However, her mood keeps on changing throughout the day. How long are these personality changes and mood swings going to last?
So this problem of mood depends on two things. One is which part of the brain is affected. For example, involvement of some areas of the brain, especially the frontal lobe, especially the dominant frontal lobe, or the left side, most of the right-handers left-sided frontal lobe involvement. Sometimes involvement of the basal ganglia. Patients can develop some sort of an endogenous depression. And many patients, because of the stroke, they are invalid, they also develop a reactive depression. So both these in various combination happens. So we have to treat the depression. So it is very important for a neurologist to identify that a person is not just invalidated by the physical part of the problem, but that they also have some psychological aspect to it. So many times treating this depression really helps in the rehabilitation of these patients. So many times when they are depressed, they don't cooperate for physiotherapy, they shout at the physiotherapy, they don't want help. So they keep lying down at the age of 75, 80. That leads to arthritis, that leads to stiffness, that leads to contractures, and then they become bedridden for life. So it's very important, a small step, to identify this depression and both counsel them as well as give them some antidepressants if it is more severe. It helps a lot. And this is a very common problem in patients who have got stroke. So if it is just reactive and mild, just coaxing them and talking to them and being around with them will help. But if it's more severe, it's better to see a neurologist or a psychiatrist and get treated for the mood disorder.
Dr. Alok Ranjit, this is for you. Hi, sir. I am 29 years old. How can I change my diet to lower my risks for stroke?
How can you change your diet? Oh, in India, you can change your diet tremendously. First of all, good lifestyle. You must consult a dietitian, get the diet related to that region. There's no point having just like that because the food is very specific to a region. Make sure that you don't have a genetic predisposition to diabetes or hypertension. If you have, get regular checkup done. If you have those diseases, get it controlled. One of the biggest risk factor is stress. And stress is something which we bring on ourselves. Partly is avoidable, partly it is unavoidable. With these things and regular exercise, the regular exercise will make a huge difference. Keeping a physical shape, not going towards obesity, but being a healthy life will go a long way. And if you can follow these basic rules, not only stroke, we are talking about rest of the diseases. It will help you tremendously with practically every system in the body, including a good mind and a good family life too. If you go smiling to your house, the family will be happy too.
Absolutely. Dr. Satish Chandra, This is for you. I'm a stroke survivor. Is this condition genetic? Are my children at higher risk for stroke? What about my grandchildren?
Is a very important and a common question being asked. The stroke is normally acquired disorder. So it is an acquired disorder which occurs because of your own risk factors which are there. Most often it is in the form of hypertension, diabetes, ischemic heart disease, stress, and many of these things which are risk factors which you acquire or we acquire during our life. However, in a younger patient, there are some patients who are called young strokes. That means there are patients who can have a stroke even at a very young age, less than 40 years, less than 25 years. Whenever there is such a stroke which occurs at young age, in addition to all these risk factors, there are some genetic factors which are known to occur. So such patients, we always look for certain genetic factors. It is not that every stroke is hereditary or every stroke is genetic. These are very rare, which will be less than about 10% of the strokes are genetic in nature. So we don't bother or worry much about this. So don't be worried about your grandchildren or your children. What is more worry about is yourself, and you take care of yourself and you look for the risk factors. But one caution is, if you have diabetes and hypertension, which can run in the families, so naturally, your family member, be aware that it can be hypertension early in the age in a younger individual, in the next generation. So let them be aware so that they can look after themselves early in the age to prevent the hypertension, prevent the diabetes, prevent ischemic heart disease, or any other factors which are causing the problem. That is very, very important. So more often than not, it is an acquired disease. Very, very rarely, less than about 10% of the cases will be genetic or hereditary. And these are very few genes which have been isolated and looked after, and runs in younger people. When an younger stroke occurs in the family, we always look for that. Otherwise, it is acquired.
So with that, we come to the end of our questions. So I really thank you, doctors, for taking time off to have this very comprehensive session for our viewers on stroke. And I hope, dear viewers, that you have found this session useful. It's not, yes, doctor.
I wanted to add one thing, that you don't only acquire genetics from your family member, you acquired bad habits from your family. The same family eats the same diet. Yeah. If your father is a smoker, you're likely to be a smoker. So it's not only about genetics, it's about the habits also we learn. Absolutely. So this is something which everyone must understand, that you don't only inherit genes, we also inherit habit and lifestyle from your elders.
Absolutely.
I want to add one more point, if the time permits.
Of course, please.
The important thing is stroke has a higher mortality and the morbidity. But when you act in time, they recover fast. And when actual life is there, when a person gets into having a stroke, there will be a lot of mental health issues, which Dr. Arul Selvan already touched upon, which is very, very important. A person who is active today suddenly knows that he had a stroke. He gets devastated, and then he thinks that he cannot do anything. Definitely not. They can lead an active life. They can lead an active life. They can come back to normal. Today we had a stroke, World Stroke Day, and we had some patients speaking about the stroke in Bangalore. And one of the ladies said that she had a stroke and she recovered so well. She started writing a book, and she has now written a complete book because she is a journalism person. So she has written a book and published it after a stroke. Can you believe that? So it is possible. You can lead a normal life even after the stroke, provided you are intervened early. So start early, immediate, early diagnosis, prompt treatment, make you to lead a normal life. Thank you.
So viewers, you heard our experts say everything that you need to know about stroke. So, but I think the key messages are that you have to seek immediate medical attention and go to the right place to get the treatment on time. And also don't forget, maybe it's a good day today, being World Stroke Day, that you should take a pledge to start modifying your risk factors and looking at your lifestyle critically to see whether there are any risk factors that you may be fostering, as doctors said, through your habits that you need to change so that you can get rid of all those risk factors that may precipitate a stroke. Minutes can save lives, so learn the science, say it's a stroke, and save precious time, as our campaign today for World Stroke Day says. So till we meet again, stay safe, stay healthy, and act fast. Thank you very much, doctors, for joining us today, and see you all soon. Namaste.
Thank you.